You're just a bit too stuck in the old ways for where this company is headed. They want someone who can bring fresh ideas and shake things up. My name's Rick Donnelly. I'm 62, and until this morning I'd been the CFO at Meridian Manufacturing for 15 years. I started when we were a small, struggling family business with just 3 modest factories in Cincinnati. Today, we're a public company running 18 plants throughout the Midwest. I helped steer us through 2 recessions, a tricky acquisition, and more boardroom drama than I ever wanted to remember. I'm not flashy. I don't schmooze investors at fancy events. But the numbers? They always added up. Our books were spotless, and under my watch, we never missed a single filing deadline. Then Travis Mercer showed up. 36 years old, designer blazers, pricey sneakers, and all. The board hired him as CEO 3 months ago, and he tore through the office like a whirlwind, throwing around buzzwords like synergy and disruption, realigning the company vision left and right. I had a bad feeling the moment he set up our first one-on-one. "The market's shifting, Rick," he told me today, leaning back in my chair. Yes, my chair, feet casually resting on my desk. "We need someone fluent in the language of modern finance." I stayed silent, just gave a single nod and a tight handshake. "We're bringing in Zachary Hughes," Travis added, 29 years old. Brilliant guy, just gave a TEDx talk on financial innovation that's gaining traction online. "I see," I said, keeping my voice even. "When's the handover?" Travis smiled, caught off guard by my calm. 2 weeks. We'll announce it at the next board meeting." That afternoon, while everyone else was caught up in an all-hands meeting about the company's exciting new direction, I packed my personal belongings. 15 years in this office, and everything fit neatly into one cardboard box. Family photos, a commemorative coin from our IPO, and the leather portfolio my wife Patricia gave me before she passed. On my way out, I spotted Bethany from accounts trying to hold back tears by the elevator. She'd been with me since day one. "Don't worry," I told her. "It's all part of the cycle." What I didn't say was that for the past 6 months, I'd quietly been tracking a series of questionable transactions that started popping up shortly after Travis arrived, growing more frequent after he mentioned bringing in this finance prodigy, Zachary. This wasn't about revenge. I was just doing my job, making sure the books stayed clean, even as I walked out the door. I grew up working in my father's hardware store in Covington, Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati. He drilled into me that numbers don't lie, even when people do. I put myself through college by stocking shelves and balancing his books late into the night. When I graduated, I turned down bigger offers to stay local, climbing the ranks at regional companies until Meridian's founder, Harold Phillips, personally called me in 2008. "I need someone who can keep us steady through this recession," he said. "Someone who sleeps better when the books balance." For 10 years, Harold and I built Meridian into a solid company. When he retired, the handoff was smooth. The new CEO, Diana Wright, respected the systems we put in place. We didn't always see eye to eye, but she listened. The company grew steadily. No flashy moves, just sound business and clean accounting. Then Diana retired. The board wanted fresh energy. Enter Travis Mercer, Harvard MBA, a stint at a Silicon Valley startup that had more hype than profit. The first red flag came in his second week. He ignored procurement protocols to hire a marketing consultant, a former classmate, at 4 times the usual rate. When I raised concerns, he just smiled. "We're thinking bigger now, Rick. The old rules don't apply." The second red flag was when he reorganized reporting so that finance went through his new chief innovation officer before reaching him. The third came when I overheard him on a call, saying our books were full of outdated methods that needed creative solutions. That's when I started watching closely. Small irregularities began to appear. Vendor contracts with companies I couldn't properly verify, consulting fees with no deliverables, budget changes signed off without department heads. My team noticed too. Kevin from internal audit stopped by one evening as I was reviewing quarterly statements. "Something's off with the new tech investment tracking," he said quietly. "The numbers don't match from entry to report." "Document everything," I told him. "Keep it strictly factual." Patricia would have told me to cause a scene, stand up in the next board meeting, go out with a bang, but cancer took her 3 years ago, and without her fire, I grew more methodical, more patient. So instead of confrontation, I kept detailed records, downloaded suspicious transactions, cross-checked irregularities, all while maintaining the same calm in meetings, even as Travis brought in more of his people and pushed mine out. I wasn't paranoid. The patterns were too consistent. Something bigger was going on, and it all centered on this new financial wonderkind, Zachary Hughes. My last board meeting lasted exactly 22 minutes. No mention of my 15 years of service, no thank you speech, no plaque or watch, just a single agenda line: CFO transition update. Travis spoke enthusiastically about exciting new fiscal directions while I sat silently at the far end of the table. The chairman, William Foster, avoided my eyes. He'd been on the board when Harold hired me. Now, he simply nodded along as Travis explained how Zachary Hughes would revolutionize capital allocation. I'd hoped for some recognition from William, something to acknowledge what we'd built. Instead, the meeting quickly moved on to the next item: Travis's plan for a new downtown headquarters. As everyone filed out, William paused briefly by my chair. "You've been an asset, Rick," he said awkwardly, patting my shoulder. "Best of luck." An asset, like a piece of equipment long past its prime. I walked back to my office, Zachary's office now, to gather my box. Through the glass walls, I could see Travis showing Zachary around, pointing at the charts on my walls like they were relics from a bygone era. Bethany waited by my door, holding an envelope. "The accounting department chipped in," she said, "for a proper farewell dinner." I thanked her, knowing I wouldn't be using it. As she turned to leave, I asked, "Bethany, when did those invoices from Vertex Solutions start coming in?" She paused. "February, I think. Right after Mr. Mercer announced the Digital Transformation Initiative." February, 2 weeks before Travis first mentioned bringing Zachary on board. That night at home, I spread out all my documentation across the dining room table. For 6 months, suspicious transactions kept cropping up. Invoices for services that were never actually delivered, consulting fees paid to foreign firms with no tax documents to back them up, and most damning of all, shell companies tied to a holding entity called Alpine Innovations. That company had only been registered 3 days before Travis was announced as CEO. The pattern was undeniable. Travis didn't bring Zachary on board because I was old-fashioned. No. Zachary was part of a larger scheme to siphon funds through fake vendors and bogus consultants, hiding it all in complicated digital transformation expenses that few dared to question these days. They wanted me out because I asked too many questions and paid too much attention to the details. I leaned back in my chair, staring down the mountain of evidence before me. For the first time since Patricia passed away, I felt something beyond the usual numbness. Not anger exactly, but a colder, sharper focus. Opening my laptop, I began sorting everything methodically. Cross-references, timelines, account trails. I wasn't going to storm in and confront Travis, call an emergency board meeting, or leak to the press. That's just not how I operate. Instead, I'd let the numbers tell the story, and this time, I'd make sure the right ears were listening. A week after I left, I decided to reach out directly to William Foster. Despite his lukewarm farewell, he'd always been fair, and I figured he deserved the chance to address what was happening before things spiraled further. I called his office and left a message with his assistant. Wanted to discuss some financial concerns from my final weeks. Nothing urgent, but worth a look. He returned the call the next day, voice cautious. "Rick, good to hear from you. Travis mentioned you might be reaching out." My stomach tightened. "Did he?" "Yes," William said. "He told me you were struggling with the transition. Said you had concerns about our new systems that Zachary has already handled." "William, these irregularities go back before Zachary arrived. Serious ones." Silence. "Look, Rick, I know this is tough. 15 years is a long time, but the board has full faith in Travis's vision, and Zachary's already improved processes you flagged. I'm afraid I have another call. Maybe we can catch up at the holiday party? I hear you're still on the invite list." Very generous of Travis. Considering what? I wanted to ask. But William had already hung up. The next morning, an email landed from Meridian's legal team. The wording was carefully neutral but clear. Any accusations of financial wrongdoing without solid proof could be considered defamatory. And they kindly reminded me about my confidentiality agreement. They were closing ranks. Someone, Travis, no doubt, had anticipated I might catch on and had already poisoned the well. So I tried a different approach. Kevin from internal audit had been with me for 8 years. If anyone else had noticed problems, it was him. We met at a diner far from the office. Kevin looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. "They promoted me," he blurted before I could ask about the accounts. "New title, big raise. Now reporting straight to Zachary." "Congrats," I said, steady. "How's that going?" Kevin stared at his coffee. "They've changed all the internal reporting. New software, new protocols. Zachary says it's more efficient." "And is it?" His expression tightened. "Rick, I can't. They had me sign extra NDAs. They're watching everyone who worked with you closely." "I hear they're talking about you, Rick. About why you left." "What kind of talk?" Kevin's voice dropped. "That you resisted necessary changes. That you made mistakes in the last quarter's reports that Zachary caught. Some are even whispering about ethical issues." My grip on the coffee mug tightened so hard I feared it'd crack. They weren't just pushing me out. They were trying to ruin my reputation to cover their tracks. "I should get going," Kevin said, tossing some cash on the table. "Mortgage and twins starting college next year. I can't risk it." "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Take care of your family, Kevin." As he hurried off, I sat there alone, letting it all sink in. My options were disappearing fast. The board wouldn't listen. My old team was either gone or too scared to speak up. And now they were attacking my name, making it nearly impossible to raise alarms without seeming like a disgruntled ex-employee. They thought they had me trapped, but they missed something. I still had access to the audit server. In my final days, while everyone thought I was quietly packing, I'd set up an emergency admin account, standard procedure for system transitions, but nobody ever checked it. It wouldn't last forever, but it might be enough. That night, using those credentials, I logged into Meridian's audit server. I worked quickly, knowing they'd find and shut down the account soon. What I uncovered blew my earlier suspicions out of the water. Alpine Innovations wasn't just one holding company. It was the center of a tangled web of shell companies, all connected through a labyrinth of transactions designed to hide their links. Some of these went back before Travis even joined, proving this wasn't some opportunistic theft. It was a planned infiltration. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. Travis wasn't hired despite his mediocre history. He was planted. His old Silicon Valley startup, full of buzz but no profit, was funded by the same investment group that had just won 3 seats on Meridian's board, including one held by William Foster's nephew Jacob, who joined 6 months ago. This wasn't an executive skimming off the top. It was a coordinated strike on Meridian itself, a slow-motion asset grab disguised as modernization. I downloaded every file I could, organizing it meticulously. By dawn, I traced over $12 million siphoned out through fake vendor contracts, inflated service agreements, and phantom consulting fees. Exhausted, I made coffee and sat on the back porch, watching the sun rise over the Ohio River. "Patricia and I bought this house for the view," I whispered. "Water calms your racing mind," she'd said. Now I let the river's steady flow help me organize my thoughts. My earlier idea to quietly alert the board had been naive. This ran deeper than Travis and Zachary. Some board members were likely involved, which explained their eagerness to replace Diana with an outsider when she retired. I had to be smarter, more strategic. I spent the entire morning piecing together connections between the board members, Travis's former associates, and the shell companies. By afternoon, I'd pinpointed 3 board members who likely had no idea about the scheme. Elaine Morrison, a former manufacturing exec who joined after retiring from a competitor, David Patel, the guy representing our workers' pension fund, and Anthony Wilson, our oldest board member who rarely spoke but never missed a vote. Then I stumbled on something I'd missed before. Zachary Hughes had worked at Vertex Solutions, one of those shell vendors, 3 years back. His name was tucked away in their incorporation papers as a founding partner, though he'd been quietly removed from public-facing materials well before Meridian hired him. As I gathered these details, my phone rang. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway. "Is this Richard Donnelly?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. My name's Vanessa Taylor. I'm with the SEC's Enforcement Division. My heart skipped. We received an anonymous tip about possible financial wrongdoing at Meridian, involving the new leadership. The tip suggested you might have relevant information. I chose my words carefully. I recently stepped down as CFO after 15 years. We're aware, she said. Would you be willing to meet informally to discuss some transactions from the past 6 months? Who else knows you're contacting me? I asked. No one outside my immediate team. This is preliminary fact-finding, not a formal investigation yet. I weighed my options. Going straight to the SEC would make this explode publicly, fast. Meridian's stock would tank. Thousands of employees, people like Bethany and Kevin, could lose their jobs if the company collapsed amid scandal. But clearly, someone had already tipped off the SEC. The clock was ticking. I'll need some time, I said finally. To do what, Mr. Donnelly? To make sure I get this right. I gave myself 3 days to set my plan in motion. First, I made sure the evidence couldn't be erased. I copied all my files to several secure locations and set up dead man switches. If I didn't enter a code every 48 hours, everything would automatically send to the SEC, the DOJ, and 3 trusted financial journalists. Next, I carefully drafted emails to Elaine, David, and Anthony. The 3 board members I believed were clean. I didn't accuse anyone directly. Instead, I highlighted troubling patterns I'd noticed before leaving, attaching just enough evidence to raise serious questions without drowning them in details. Those emails were scheduled to send automatically in 2 days. Then came the hardest part. I reached out to Bethany asking if she could meet for coffee. She agreed immediately. They're gutting your entire department, she whispered when we met. Zachary says we're consolidating financial operations, but half the team got reassignment notices. The other half's under review. Including you? I asked. She nodded, eyes shining with tears. 22 years at Meridian, and now they say my position's redundant. I've got 6 weeks to find another internal role or... I waited while she gathered herself. Bethany, remember that audit protocol we set up after the Jackson acquisition? The one with the separate verification pathway? Her brow furrowed. Then realization hit. The parallel audit trail. The system that automatically duplicates all transactions over $50,000 to a secure server? Is it still running? As far as I know, it's hard-coded into the system. Zachary's team would have to know about it specifically to disable it. I felt relief flood me. Who has access to those records now? Just the senior auditing team. And I guess Zachary, since he's CFO. What about backup archiving? Are those still sent to Iron Mountain monthly? She thought a moment. Yes, that's automated too. The October backup would have gone out last week. Perfect. Even if Travis and Zachary found out what I was doing and tried to alter the records, the originals would already be safe off-site. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. Bethany, I'm going to ask you something important. You can absolutely say no. Inside was a formal letter detailing specific financial concerns that, as a senior accounting manager, she was legally obligated to report to internal audit. It referenced only information she'd have legitimate access to. If you submit this, they can't legally retaliate without whistleblower protections kicking in. Her hand trembled as she took it. Is this why they're really pushing me out? Because I might notice these things? Probably, I said. And submitting this creates an official internal record that can't be ignored. It forces internal audit to investigate the exact transactions I've documented elsewhere. Bethany squared her shoulders. When should I send it? Tomorrow morning would be ideal. On my way home, I made 2 stops. First, to a notary public where I signed and authenticated a detailed affidavit outlining everything I'd uncovered. Then to my lawyer's office, where I left sealed instructions to be opened if anything happened to me. That evening, Kevin texted me. Z asking lots of questions about old audit protocols. Seems nervous. Watch yourself. They were starting to realize their mistake. Focused on pushing me out, they'd overlooked what I might have already documented. The pieces were in place. Now all I had to do was wait. 6 weeks after I left, everything blew up at once. The internal audit triggered by Bethany's formal complaint landed on Zachary's desk the same morning my detailed emails reached the 3 clean board members. By noon, Elaine Morrison called an emergency board meeting using her authority as audit committee chair. I wasn't there, but Bethany kept me updated via texts. The board meeting started at 2 p.m., she wrote. Travis looked pale. Zachary just got escorted to a conference room with legal. Outside auditors showed up, taking over the main conference room. By evening, the news had spread internally. Meridian was under investigation for financial irregularities. All executives hired under Travis were placed on administrative leave pending a full forensic audit. I turned off my phone and took a long walk along the river, watching Cincinnati's skyline light up as darkness fell. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. The next morning, 3 missed calls awaited me: William Foster, Travis, and Jacob Foster. I ignored them all. Instead, I answered a call from Anthony Wilson, our oldest board member. 15 years of clean books, he said, his voice rough with age. No scandals, no restatements, no missed filings. I should have spoken up when they pushed you out. You're finally speaking up, Anthony. That's what matters now. He cleared his throat. The board's named me acting chairman while we clean up this mess. William and Jacob have resigned, along with 2 others. We've terminated Travis and Zachary for cause. I said nothing. We'd like you to come back, Rick, just temporarily to assist the forensic team and help stabilize things. I watched a barge slowly make its way down the Ohio River, steady, deliberate. I'll help with the investigation, I said at last, but I'm not coming back permanently. May I ask why? Because Meridian needs someone who can innovate, I replied, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. I'm just a little too old school. 3 months later, I found myself sitting on the deck of my new cabin in Asheville, North Carolina, watching the sun dip behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. The cabin wasn't large, 2 bedrooms and a modest office, but the view was worth everything. The investigation had confirmed exactly what I suspected: a carefully coordinated scheme to drain value through fake contracts and inflated costs. Travis, Zachary, and several board members now faced federal charges for securities fraud and embezzlement. I spent 6 weeks working alongside forensic accountants to untangle the mess, then packed up my house in Cincinnati and made my way to the mountains Patricia and I had dreamed of retiring to. Meridian's settlement for my consulting during the investigation was generous, enough to buy this cabin outright and still leave plenty left over. I made my terms clear. No public statements, no press conferences, no dramatic comeback. That wasn't me. My phone buzzed with a text from Bethany. Got the promotion to Director of Accounting. The new CEO wants to rebuild the department right. I smiled and typed back, well deserved. Always keep that parallel audit trail. Yesterday, my lawyer called with news. The SEC was closing its case against Meridian after the company agreed to governance reforms and financial penalties, carefully crafted to avoid punishing shareholders or regular employees. The right outcome. As darkness wrapped the mountains, I opened the leather portfolio Patricia had given me years ago. Inside was the last photo we took together at the lake house, the summer before her diagnosis. You were right, I whispered to her smiling face. I should have made more time for views like this. Tomorrow, I planned to drive into town and meet with the director of a local nonprofit who needed help organizing their finances. Nothing flashy, just solid, clean accounting for people doing meaningful work. Some might call that old school. I simply called it integrity.